Disclaimer, warning, the content will examine phenomena that some would find offensive, inappropriate, insensitive and triggering. This content neither suggests, nor implies, medical, or any other professional advice. This is a light-hearted discussion of a comedian and his therapist friend engaged in hypothetical conversation on Black mental health and race. In no way are the following views and content associated, or affiliated, with this, or any other, platform that this podcast may be accessed. All information and opinion are independent expression of free speech that a reasonable person may freely consider adapting or opposing in their own paradigm.
Can you hear me, Dr. Moore?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Oh, all right. And I think we're still streaming live. Let's test that out right quick. I was saying that even though I use the word satire because satire, whether the conversation is serious or not serious, what satire does is it allows a person to look at something and see if they can extract something that is beneficial out of a story, whether the story be true or false, whether the story be lighthearted or serious in nature. Satire requires that you develop your own insight. As my friend's mother used to say, every tub must stand on its own bottom. And I don't want anyone to misconstrue anything that we say, lighthearted or not, serious or not, as some type of advice or pointing to how they should think about things. I think anybody that listens to anything should come to their own conclusions. We promote critical thinking rather than telling you how to think. If that was a fair assessment of our conversation.
Yeah, and like anything, you chew up the meat, spit out the bones. So that's applicable to you.
Yes, sir.
That's applicable to you, then you apply it. If it doesn't, then you don't.
As I used to say in my rehab class, if it don't apply, let it fly.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, brother. I got a whole dissertation here for you this week, brother. We are in the month of Women's Month. A tribute to them, as Dr. Moore precautioned me, that Women's Month is every month, brother. So I'm looking, brother. Every month is Women's Month, and every month is Man's Month, because there has to be a balance between man and woman. If I quoted your insight, I don't think he told me directly that, but he was trying to convey the point that when we try to focus something or reduce it to a month, we are actually missing out on the strategies of life.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing this week, brother?
I'm doing, bro. It's Ramadan. Ramadan Mubarak, bro.
Ramadan Kareem, brother. And yes, indeed. I still ain't get to listen to Minister Farrakhan's speech. Maybe I'll get to it. Maybe that's what I should have been doing instead of watching TV. It's also March Madness, brother. I hope you got your TV turned to Channel 0 and watching all the games.
Yeah, bro. It's a nice wasting time.
It sure is.
Nice distraction.
Let's give a shout out to this white woman, brother. She is the next Larry Bird. Carolyn Clark, or Caitlin Clark. This woman is just hitting threes from half court. Have you seen her in action?
I have not.
Well, she's broken some NCAA records for scoring. She's the highest scorer if I'm correct in my information or my analysis of that information, she is now the highest scoring player in college basketball, but she's looking to move straight to the NBA rather than finishing her career in college. Maybe we'll talk about that. Tonight's episode is dedicated to women, given the precaution that Dr. Moore has tried to elucidate. That's a word for you, brother, to teach you about something that's maybe slightly misguided, or the attempt is a failure in terms of its process.
You are listening to Black Mental Health and Race.
Tonight's title is Trauma-Driven Beliefs, Women's Rights and Stereotypes, Neurological Disregulation. And I looked up neurological dysregulation, and it says, we now know that there's an underlying symptom that plays a role in the outward signs of post-traumatic stress syndrome and disorder. And that's dysregulation in brain dysregulation. In most ways, brain dysregulation is a problem. It causes us to be overreactive or numb, or to have poor judgment and even suffer with a higher than normal rate of chronic disease. So it's far-reaching. Just one of the theories out there for neurological dysregulation. Have you ever heard of it in your therapeutic discipline, my brother?
Well, when you start
it's more of a biological reference.
Yeah, when you start getting into neurology and things like that, that's different from therapy, because now you're getting into like medical diagnosis and things like that.
Right.
So dysregulation though is something that we deal with, all the time, because most people, or a lot of people, dysregulate often emotionally. And so a lot of times, what I'm talking to people about is how they are emotionally dysregulated, and how to be aware of that, and how to learn how to regulate as opposed to dysregulate emotionally.
Right. One of the things that stood out was how people can be in a post-traumatic state disorder, and instead of making proper decisions, they're more inclined to poor judgment. I wanted to start off tonight with Sanaya Spain, a 19-year-old who had a twin sister in Brooklyn, brother. I don't know if the news reached D.C., but she was stabbed in the neck and chest and died from her wounds. We spoke about Miss Osman and the Brick Lady incident for several episodes of Black Mental Health and Race. And I never thought in a million years that we would come so close to the very thing that we say is almost impossible to happen, that some male would overreact from a woman refusing to give out her phone number. So according to this story, Dr. Moore, have you heard of this young lady that lost her life?
I have not, and so I'm not aware of it at all. But what I will say, and I don't know the details of this case at all. But what I know for sure is that when emotions are high, intelligence is low.
That is a very poignant point, my brother. Very poignant indeed. So the story goes briefly that two 19-year-old sisters, twin sisters, and their older brother were at a party in Wyckoff Projects. Is the first problem for me. And the party had ended, and they went to escort their friend so that this friend could leave. And on the way back of escorting the friend home, that was along with the two sisters and their older brother, they stopped at the store, and they encountered a group of black men standing on the corner store. We call the corner stores here in New York the bodegas. And this encounter, the guy was asking for the number. I guess these young guys that were standing on the corner were kind of inebriated. She refused to give a number, but she said she'll give the guy her Instagram. The guy became offended that she was not cooperative with giving the number, and that whatever. And it ultimately came down to the store owner that owned the bodega. It's 2:30 in the morning, brother, which is the second red flag for me. It's in the projects. It's 2:30 in the morning. Young black males are standing on the corner, and they are inebriated, and they harassing anybody that comes by. And 19-year-olds are not exempt from that harassment. So the store owner sees that the drunken guys are threatening violence upon the two twin sisters and the older brother. So he locks the door in and locks the three people that are being targeted by these group of black males outside the store. And so the black males outside the store walk off, or at least it seemed that they walked off. There's one other young lady in the store videotaping all of this. As soon as they walk out the store, he unlocks the door and walks out the store. The guys are waiting right there on the corner. The bodega is on the corner, but a blind side of that corner, which they couldn't see, where they thought the guys had walked off, they were standing right there. So when they came out the door, the altercation began. And within a couple of seconds, the young lady was stabbed in the neck and the chest, and her twin sister was stabbed in the arm. And there was fighting amongst the brother, I guess, trying to get these guys off of her. But all in that melee, two stabbings occurred, one to the sister and one to the other twin sister. One of the sisters, Shemaya Spain, was murdered during that altercation. She died on the spot, and the other twin sister, which is Shania Spain, I think it is, if I got the names mixed up, please forgive me. She sustained injuries, but she's stable. I'm not sure if she's out of the hospital, but her wounds weren't mortal wounds. And she survived, and the brother survived. The other problem with this story is why weren't the police called? I think it's a dangerous assumption, especially in Brooklyn, brother. This is Brooklyn projects. Any projects in Brooklyn or the Bronx and some parts of Queens, if you know anything about living here in New York City, which most people don't, but people that are from here know that you should call the cops. Whenever it's 2:30 in the morning and people are so belligerent and so violent and so have so much disregard for life that they just want to hurt people, it's best to call the cops and make sure that you get home safely rather than try to wait out their anger, thinking that they're going to leave and then you can go. You live right across the street and never made it back across the street, brother. How about that for a story to begin tonight's episode on women?
I don't know, because that sounds deeper than women, and it sounds more complicated and more nuanced than.
I'm gonna tell you why I said that. Because now, since you don't know much about the story, you as a clinical therapist may be able to speak to the point of how is this twin sister going to survive witnessing being a part of the incident that killed her sister. How is she supposed to survive post-traumatic stress disorder, having witnessed that? I think you could speak more to that than actual facts of the case so far.
Yeah. So again, the case sounds very nuanced to me. But if you're talking about witnessing murder of anyone, is going to be traumatic, right? And it's probably going to be even more traumatic if it's a brother or sister or loved one. So surviving that is probably going to be the rest of her life issue. She's probably going to need a lot of therapy, ongoing therapy, for that. There's not a pill that you can take that's going to take that away. But seeing that and living that is probably going to be an experience that plays out in her head for a very long time. And learning how to manage how that plays out in her head is what she'll have to work through in therapy.
Wow. That is so traumatic, brother. Hopefully, no woman has to experience that, especially at such a young age. I just wanted to start off. It wasn't even part of the topic in this outline. It was just such a traumatic story. And we had been talking about how extreme it would be for somebody to even get hit with a brick, much less die, just because they refuse to give their phone number. And it seems like the universe just put that out there for all to just contemplate their surroundings, their lives, and how to stay safe. Especially if you're in the hood, you have to stay on point.
Yeah, and so that this doesn't sound like, your parents or your grandparents talking to you in terms of saying stay on the porch, right? Because if you live in the hood and you grew up in the hood, somebody telling you, well, it's dangerous outside, don't go outside, that's not going to stop a young person from doing that. In fact, it's probably going to motivate them, to want to go outside even more. I think what's best, what might serve the audience in a different way, is to say, be very aware. We in our age could very easily say, call the police. But when we were that age, that's something that we would definitely probably not have entertained, right? But I would say, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your environment. if you're going to go, to a party, be aware of who's throwing the party, what type of people are going to be at the party, and what the possibilities might be.
Yes, sir. Such a tragedy. In terms of dysregulation, here's a black male youth. One of the people that your dissertation was focused on, and here's one black male. And to update the record on this story, the young black male turned himself in today. He was missing for 3 days, 2 to 3 days. They've been looking for him, but he turned himself in today. It's rumored that he was with his grandmother in New Jersey, and I think that may have been the influence to turn himself in. Because one of the good things about old heads, as they call us, is that even if you are a family and you've done something this heinous, I know my mother, brother, would have called the cops on me. She would not let me get away with nothing. I couldn't do a slight infraction. Because my mother warned me. She said, if I catch you stealing or anything, and you try to come back through this door, I'm calling the cops on you. So we had to be mindful as brothers in my household. I know it's not that way in everybody's household, but we had a early warning system in my mother, and the beatings that we get from my father if we just stepped out of line, stepped out of bounds of their rules as parents. I don't know the parenting situation of this young black male, but he's in a world of trouble, and that's why I referred it back to dysregulation, where a person doesn't have any regard for life. He's just in his rage, and his rage combined with that alcohol made him do something that was going to screw up the rest of his life. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that point.
Yeah. It just sounds to me that sounds more severe than dysregulation of emotions, right? You and I could have what might be called, quote unquote, normal dysregulation of emotions, meaning that, we might get upset about something, we might overreact to something, but it becomes pretty severe when, you take a life, in the midst of not being able to manage your emotions. It sounds like there was something deeper than that. And I don't know if these people knew one another prior to. I'm not exactly sure.
She didn't know none of those guys.
Okay. So again, like, I don't know the details, to that, but I do know, growing up in a hood, you might not know everybody in your hood. You might know of them, but when you grow up, in an adverse environment, that has a lot of anger and tension, it's almost like anybody can get it any day. You just happen to be, in the wrong place at the wrong time, or in the right place at the wrong time. I mean, it's just a part of that environment, right? And so, it's very difficult, trying to avoid, situations like that when you live in environments like that, and when you entertain, events like that. It's very difficult to escape those environments unscathed. And when you do, I mean, you almost have to count your blessings. But it sounds like in this situation, this young man had a lot of issues. I don't know what they were, but it sounds like he had some things that he was dealing with, and the fact that he was drinking, you know, um, maybe he was trying to suppress some of what he was going through and what he was dealing with. And it's very unfortunate that that sister, encountered him while he was going through that. But it sounds like, he needs a lot of help. Where he's going, he's probably not going to get the help that he needs. And it's very unfortunate that the sister, had to encounter him, in an episode like that.
You're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. We are at the 42-minute mark in this podcast. It goes quick, brother. This is season 4, episode 6. Trauma, women's rights, stereotypes, and somehow we're going to try to see if we can get to the point where people are exercising poor judgment. People are doing things to the excess or extreme, and people are somehow making decisions that could destroy the rest of their lives. So on to the introduction to tonight's topic, brother. It's funny how it takes 45 minutes to even get to the topic, but that story was so disheartening to me, man. It broke my heart to even hear that story, and I couldn't go without mentioning it tonight. On to a lighter subject, my brother. Have you heard about Drea Michelle? I think she's one of the cast of one of those Love and Hip Hops or Basketball Wives. Somewhere she fits into this reality show genre, and it seems, or people may have the opinion, that she may have targeted this young NBA player, Jalen Green, and she's pregnant with his child now, brother. Would you find that predatory for a 39-year-old woman, celebrity woman, getting impregnated by a 22-year-old NBA player just getting into the game? Seems like she's in his bag. What is your opinion on this, and what would you say in your industry of therapy about a situation like this? Whether it be that you're doing therapy with Drea Michelle or a player like Jalen Green, what insights do you have for that?
I'll be honest with you.
Don't
personally,
say it, brother.
Personally, I really don't care. It doesn't
you not to say it.
Because it doesn't impact me in one way or the other. But I want to be careful about, people having strong feelings about things that they have no control over, right? And so
should mind their business, right?
Right, but I find that, I don't know how much life a person has if they're spending a significant amount of time on other people's lives, right? So I almost think in the day of social media that it's just entertaining to entertain other people's lives, right? So I think this young basketball player is a millionaire, right? He's making, buku tons of money. And how he's spending his time, who he's spending his time with, really is kind of his thing and her thing. I don't know if they like one another, dislike one another. I don't know I'm sure not gonna sit here and say I feel that she's predatory. I think it was very consensual. He's an adult, she's an adult. I think she has one or two other kids, maybe one other kid by another famous person or athlete or whatever. So those people live in a different world, right? And in that world that they live in, it's kind of bubble-ish, if you will, meaning that they all kind of circumvent in that little world, right? And so people,
they're trapped in that world too.
Well, I don't know if they're trapped, because maybe I feel more like it's a choice to be in that world. But if you decide to be in that world, play in that world of people that are playing in that world, then that's what happens, right? So Drea, she's in that world of, basketball wives or whatever, and the NBA player, he's in that world.
She's a trap queen, brother.
She's what?
A trap queen. You know what a trap queen is?
No, I don't, bro. But I'm not gonna call her that, because I don't know what that is, and I'm not gonna say that that's what she is. That's what she is. But I'm saying, if he allowed himself to be wooed or trapped, or if he pursued her, I'm not gonna sit here and blame her, for him having intercourse with her. That's I think that's on him, right? So if she's older and he chooses to date an older woman, that's on him. I mean, man, God forbid if I sit here and try to be the judge and jury of dating older, younger women, because Lord knows there's a movie out now called Freaknik. I had to raise my hand and say I was one of those people at the Freaknik, and participating in all the debauchery that happened at Freaknik. So I'm not gonna sit here and act like,
judge and jury.
Right. Or I can throw rocks, you know what I'm saying? Or and then hide my hand. So I don't feel no ways really about whatever relationship they have, because I don't really know. Because man, older men dating younger women, I mean, that shit happens all the time and nobody says nothing.
Well, let me approach it from a different angle, brother. If I will, just for a minute, just to entertain the conversation. Let's drop Drea Michelle and Jalen Green from the conversation. Is a 39-year-old woman predatorial? And I'm going to show you where this conversation just starts to decline in knowledge and gets to bias that people have with each other in their individual conversations, where people begin to start arguing because they're saying that if it were a man that was 39 and the lady was 22, it would be looked upon more with more ridicule and disdain than it would if the roles are reversed, as in the case of a 39-year-old woman.
I disagree.
As opposed, speak on that, brother.
I strongly disagree. And I think historically, you have older men historically who have dated younger women, and that's been a trend forever. This notion of older women dating younger men is something relatively new, but historically, particularly in the Black community, not only in the Black community, the white community too, older men have always traditionally dated younger women. So I don't think that it would be frowned upon. In fact, it's not even, in my opinion, it's not even looked at that strangely. People almost anticipate that an older man would date a younger woman, and that older men often look for younger women. So I strongly disagree that it would be looked at strangely if an older man was dating a younger woman. That that happens all the time.
As compared to I guess what the argument is in the general public is that should she get the same smoke as a man would be accused of for dating somebody way younger than him? Should her being female get the same type of disapproval in terms of society? Should women get that same type of smoke that men get for targeting younger women?
I think it depends on who's giving. Look, depends on who's giving the smoke, right? So if you care about the people that's giving the smoke, then then maybe you shouldn't do it. But if you don't care about who's giving the smoke, because if social media, you would only know that based on the people that you were personally interacting with. But now, because of social media, everybody has a platform. But I can guarantee you, if you looked at the people who were giving the smoke, who has time to give their opinion
in their lives,
if you looked at their lives, I guarantee you, majority of the people, I guarantee you, most of their lives is a shipwreck, right? And that's why it's so easy for them to talk about other people's lives. So I don't think you should really care. That's your personal life. I don't know how old my grandfather was to my grandmother, but she told me constantly he was way older than her. I don't know who my biological father is, but it is alleged that he was way older than my mom. Right? So, this is much to do about nothing to me, particularly in my personal world. And I don't know how much they care or should they care about what people have to say about them. I mean, whoever has an opinion, none of them are going to pay child support. None of them are going to babysit. None of them are going to have any real, impact on that relationship or those kids.
So let me make one more point and get your feedback on it, brother, because I do have my own personal opinions about this. Not necessarily about Dre or Michelle, because I don't know who Jalen Green even was. But let me give you my opinion on it. I was saying to someone, men can't be raped or even trapped the way that a woman can be. Now, I may be biased in even saying that, but as we start this discussion, we're talking about the prevailing stereotypes and misconceptions about women's sexual behavior. This is Women's Month. You're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. Is it the same thing when women are accused of rape? Just in your personal opinion, not your professional background. I don't see men getting raped by women. I just don't see it.
Well, it does happen. In fact, you should watch.
It does. I don't want to ignore that.
Right.
But I'm talking about a grown ass man, 22 years old. There is nothing that a woman could do. I'll put it this way, since the title of tonight's show is traumatic. Let's say that this 22-year-old male, when he gets to 32, he's no longer in the NBA. He's no longer making millions of dollars, but he has this exorbitant child support to pay. He may get it lowered, but he may look back on his life at 22 and say, hey, this bitch trapped me off, and now that I'm older and more mature, I need to say that she was a predator towards me. Is there any validity in a person feeling that at 32 than they would at 22. And what's your personal opinion on it?
Well, I think hindsight is 20/20, right?
Hmm.
So if at 32, of course, you can look back at a situation and be like, you know what? I think I was kind of manipulated. Yeah, maybe you were, but even if you were participatory in that act, right? And so if you it's so, for example, if I say, man, you know what? Now that I look back at it, when I was 20, I was 21, man, the system really took advantage of me because I really didn't know what I was doing when I was shooting them guns, when I was selling them drugs, when I was doing X, Y, and Z. And I don't think it's fair that I should have got that jail time, right? I don't think it's fair that I should have quit that charge because I really, not naively looking back, you know, I think I was kind of taken advantage of by the system because I really wasn't educated about the law, right? But here's what I know. Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right.
Right? You're not going to get off because you didn't know. Right? And so if he's playing a grown man's game, he's going to get grown man experience. And so while he might not know it now, he's going to know it later. So, and I'm sure, you know, he has people in his ear or people around him. And I'm saying I'm sure. I'm really not sure. But maybe there's people around him that are saying things, surely on social media, about what he should and should not do. Here's what I say. For me, it says a lot about your level of intelligence, your ability or inability to communicate with people, right? Because I have a son that's 20 and I have a daughter that's 17. I couldn't imagine talking to someone that young and what we would have in common. Right? And so it says a lot to me about anyone, and I'm not talking about those two people in particular, but if you are an older gentleman or older woman and your sexual appetite or the people that you choose to date, you know, is of a significant age different lower or higher, it says a lot to me about your ability or inability to communicate with people and connect with people of your age, right? Because maybe you can't connect and communicate with people of a particular intelligence, right? So you have to talk to people with a lower intelligence, male or female. So to me, that's my first thought, because you know, if I'm interacting with someone that's younger, the only communication we could probably have is a sexual conversation because it doesn't take that much communication, right? But if we sat down to talk every day, then that's a different level of understanding, right? Because my life experiences and the things that I've done in life, you know, is surely probably going to go over their head because they haven't been there, may not ever go there. And where they are in life, surely I can't relate, even if I can empathize, sympathize. You know what I'm saying? It's a different level of relation of being able to relate to someone on a day-to-day basis, you know, when they're significantly younger than I.
Yes, sir. We are at the 1 hour mark in Black Mental Health and Race. We're talking about women's issues. We, being males, have no expertise on women's issues. However, we are trying to walk ourselves through this thing with some of the stereotypes and some of the misconceptions about women, and see if we can come to a higher understanding. You're listening to some high vibration conversation between two Black men. It's called Black Mental Health and Race. We invite you to participate at any point in the game. I will give out the number. Once again, you're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. Did you have any links that you wanted to give out, brother?
No. But what I will say is I've had significant conversations with close friends of mine that are interested in younger women. And I personally find that kind of disgusting and kind of perverted. And
now I got to defend myself, brother.
And I say that because I know, I have a young 17-year-old, and
right.
she has friends and things like that. And one of the things that kind of bother me is when I see an older person dating a younger person, I feel like they are robbing that young person of their youth.
Right.
And I feel like,
especially female, I think we could have that bias that which brings me back to my point of it's different. If a older female is dating a younger man, that's on him. You get in where you fit in. You're gonna learn some lessons from that older woman. But when a male does it, I think we should have more smoke from dating somebody that's 22.
Well, and again, I'm only gonna have quote unquote smoke or conversation for you if it's personal, if I know you personally.
Right, if it's my daughter.
Right. And you're coming to me, well, even if it's not my daughter, but you're telling me about somebody else's daughter that you're dating that, that's 20, 30 years younger, right? Because I feel like you're robbing them of their youth. And I think that, it's like the old man at the young
But not
club.
so much for the Jalen Greens of the world.
Well, again, I don't like getting in rich people conversation. It doesn't make sense to me, right? Because that's a different world. But if I get into like the real world, that's not the real world, right? Those people and what they do with money, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not really fair.
Okay, so for the average Joe, should it be the same type of smoke for the average Joe?
But the average Joe is different. So if the average Joe is trying to compare himself to a millionaire, right, that's making millions of dollars, and you making maybe 30, 40, right? That maybe 30, 40,000, you ain't got no business in that conversation. And you trying to have a baby by somebody, you shouldn't have a baby at all. I don't by anybody. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're making $30,000, $40,000, shit, you could probably barely take care of yourself. But
so if an older woman has allowed herself to be impregnated by a average Joe at 22, is she
she's irresponsible?
Like
so well, I'm not. I don't know if I'm gonna say predator unless she's taking advantage of him.
Say, brother.
Against his will. But
is he being robbed of his youth that she's pregnant with his child? The average Joe.
He is being robbed of his youth, whether he knows it or not. He's only 20-something years old, and when he 10 years later, 20 years later, he's probably going to regret that, right? Because what you think you know at 20 and what you really know at 30 is two different things. You just don't know that yet.
Amen, brother. For the sake of moving on, I'd like to say to the audience, this conversation can be carried on in your living room, in your barbershop. There's a lot more nuance to it. I think me and Dr. Moore have just given you some type of conversation to start at home with your loved ones or just people in general, and to have an intelligent conversation about it. there are a lot of steps to it, and I think Dr. Moore and I have given our take on it. We'd like to hear yours, or at least you start a conversation with somebody in your life. We're going to move on, if it's okay, brother. If you had any last points on that, I'll let you air them out now.
No, bro, that's it, bro. I just think that, you know, you're responsible for everything that you allow to come into your life, right? And so if, you know, if you are a young person, you're 20 years old, whether you're male or female, and you choose to have a kid, the kid is the one that's gonna suffer the most, right? Because that kid is gonna grow up with you, right? You're not gonna grow that kid up. That kid is gonna grow up with you. And you are too immature at that age, really, to understand what it is to be being a mother or father. And that kid is not going to understand that you don't know. They're just going to expect that you're the parent and that you know or that you should know. And what you're probably going to do, not intentionally, but you're going to create levels of resentment that you didn't intend to create.
Yes, sir. You're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you're just too young to know it.
Our number here is 929-675-8647. That's 929-675-8647. If you'd like to join the conversation. I appreciate all of the listeners. We had 8 listeners this week, brother. That's better than the 3 that we usually get. So I'm appreciative of the growing audience, and you are some of the smartest people on the planet. It's my personal opinion, brother. For listening to us, we have a high vibration tone each week that we'd like you to get into. In the historical context of women's empowerment, brother, they said that the War of 1812. Now I'm going to see how sharp you is, brother. When did the War of 1812 take place, brother?
1812.
That is incorrect, brother. I was just seeing if you were still sharp on your toes, brother. So I'm wondering, how does the War of 1812 have anything to do with women's empowerment? And the reference here is to how men went off to war. That War of 1812 lasted over 100 years, and men were just dying left and right. So by default, women, as you were saying last week, started to fill these roles because there were no men. The men were at war. So it just came by default that a lot of women got into roles that were initially planned and provided for men in society. But with no men to fulfill all of these roles in society, women by default got those roles, and it led to their empowerment. I said, that's a good point. I didn't think of it that way. But they were saying before the 1800s, women were subjugated even here in the United States. And they've come a long way, my brother. It's 2024. And women in general have a lot of power, and white women in particular have an excessive amount of power, but they're still not equal to men. They're still paid less than men for the same jobs. We still have issues with whether abortion should be legal. Is it the woman's right to choose, or is it the right to save the child? Things like that, brother. So interesting how it started off. Point number 2, brother, was women's rights advocacy. And this is a point, an ongoing fight between gender equality. So even in the midst of women's equality, we now have a new type of woman being made, or somehow influencing the culture, the politics, and the religion or lack thereof in trans women wanting equal rights with women's rights. Any point or question on that, and we'll move on to point number 3. We'll try to get through this episode.
I'm not sure the question you're asking me.
It's not necessarily a question. You got the women's role changing by the 1800s, and you got now, even with women's empowerment, 2024, you got a new faction of women who said that they are real women and that they should have the same rights as the women that went through all of this suffering for all of these years until the 1800s. And even then, it was a gradual progression to get women's rights and empowerment. And now you have a new set of women claiming that they should have the same type of empowerment, or entitled to the same rights as women, and that they share in that women's right advocacy.
Well, I am not going to get into
that's right, brother, because you get beat down.
Well, I'm not really worried about getting
type of women get fight, brother.
I'm not really worried about getting beat down verbally or physically, but I just don't think that I know
they
enough.
Can lift more than you.
Maybe. But lifting doesn't necessarily equate to winning. So, but I just feel like I'm not in a position to talk about quote unquote new women, because I don't really know what that is. But if I just talk about women in general, I think that what I'm seeing with women from the past until now, I think there's been a huge setback for them with Trump and the Trump supporters in terms of what they've done with abortion rights and things like that. I'm afraid that if people like Trump get in office again, what that will further mean for women and women's rights going forward. I think that there's a huge move to take them back, take women back, to take minorities back to a time where they didn't have a voice, where women were seen and not heard. And, I would caution us to be very careful about what we call the progression of women, while we see, in plain sight, a clear attempt to take women back to a place where they don't have rights at all.
Yes, sir. Indeed. I'm going to come right out and say it, brother. There is no reason for a person that is born male to be competitive with a female in sports. And if sports is not a place for equality, then I think we have a right to question. And I'm pro transgender, but it's bigger than that. It goes beyond the point of equality. If people that were born male are asserting the same rights as women. I think it begs the point that we go back to reason rather than people's feelings. If you feel like a woman and you want to dress like a woman and you want to have the anatomy of a woman, you have all rights and privilege to do so. However, when you cross that line in terms of wanting to share their equality as a Johnny-come-lately in the game of womanhood, I think reason should prevail rather than feelings and trying to equate the I don't want to get in trouble either, my brother, but I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I'm not going to talk about transgenders or whatever because I don't know anything about that, and I surely don't want to get in a conversation about somebody feeling like something in that meaning because you feel that way that's appropriate. You're entitled to feel the way that you want to feel, but you just don't have control of the way that other people feel about you feeling that way. So, you can say, I feel sick, but if your boss says, well, you still need to come to work, or you can say, I don't feel like, paying the mortgage. I don't feel like taking care of the kids. You can have whatever feelings you want to have. It doesn't neglect your responsibility, right? So I think that there's a level of maturity that should kick in when you are functioning on emotions versus reality.
And will you say that what did you say? What should kick in?
Responsibility.
Got the words. Oh, okay. Will you say responsibility should kick in? I think reason should kick in terms of everybody that's making the legislation and laws. We had a transgender in MMA, mixed martial arts. I'm like, here's a way that you can beat up women and not go to jail for it.
Well, that's why when you say reason is relative. It depends on the.
Right.
It depends on the person who's doing.
But if we're making legislation based on somebody saying that because of this feeling, you get to fight women, you get to compete with women in these sports.
Well, that's why I said responsibility as opposed to reason, because reason is relative, right? So if your reasoning is, well, I'm really a woman because I feel like a woman, right? That's your reasoning. That's your logic.
But there should be no reason without logic, and logic says that you have to contend with science, and they're not doing that. Science will automatically end this discussion.
Yeah, but they aren't gonna. See, again, those two different things. So if you're talking about science and reasoning, those are two different. They don't always go together, right? Those people are not going to match science with reason, right? Because if you do science, then you're not going to have reason, right? Those people that think like that are not going to be scientific, right? They're just going to be emotional, right? So they're just going to deal with their belief and their feeling, right? But when you start talking about science, then you're talking about mathematics. Right, and then that might not add up, and they don't want it to add up, right? Because if they wanted it to add up, then they would. It wouldn't be about reason, right? Because reasoning is, in my mind, this is the way I see
it. Indeed, we are at the 1 hour and 21 minute mark in Black Mental Health and Race. I am your host, MF Doug. My co-host is Dr. Moore. Last word on that subject, and I'll give you a last word too, brother. There was a joke that said that you can't cut off the ears of a mule and call it a horse. And I'll leave it at that. I'll give you the last word on that subject, my brother.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I don't think I have anything further to say. It's just my opinion. You can identify as what you want to identify. You can call yourself what you want to call yourself, but you just don't. You're not going to be able to control other people's perspective about what you choose to call yourself or what you choose to identify as, right? So I think, your focus shouldn't necessarily be on how other people are going to receive you, but how you receive yourself. And as part of you being able to receive yourself is being received and accepted by other people. And I think if that's the case, then my argument or my pushback is I don't know that you really believe that about yourself, right? Because if you say I'm the GOAT, I'm the best, then you prove that, you substantiate that, right? You become, a Kobe Bryant, a Black Mamba. You become a Michael Jordan. You become a Mike Tyson. You become, what you want people, what you believe about yourself, what you want other people to believe about you, and you manifest that. But if what you want other people to believe about you, then you have to manifest that. And it can't be, well, I can only manifest this if you believe this about me. You have to believe it first about yourself. And if your belief is predicated on other people's acceptance, then I think that's problematic. And you probably don't really believe it yourself.
Indeed, brother. We could get deep into that conversation because I've got a lot to say, but what are your thoughts at home? Who will be the next person that you have a conversation with about the roles of women and those that want equality with women from a newer generation? I'll leave it at that. Point number three, brother. We're almost finished. Go ahead.
Well, let me just add this last part.
Yes,
when I decided that I wanted to become a doctor, right? My mind state had to shift, right? In that I said, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to become. What does it take to do this? Right? So it didn't matter to anybody that I had a thought process that that's what I wanted to do. It only mattered when I did what I said I wanted to do, when I manifested that, right? But until then, it doesn't matter, right? And in the academic world, they say there's something called all but ABD, all but dissertation, right? And so that means that in the academic world, of getting a doctoral degree, there are many people that start, but most of them don't finish, right? And so they call those people ABD. So they got as far as finishing the coursework, but they couldn't finish the dissertation work, right? And so they're all but dissertation, ABD, right? And so again, my closing point is if you say that you are going to be this or that, then you have to think like that and be like that in order to do that. So if you say you want to become a doctor, then you have to think like, what would it take to become a doctor? What do I need to do to become a doctor? Right? And am I doing doctoral things? Right? And so otherwise you're just having a conversation or you're just talking. right? And so until you become that, it doesn't matter to anybody that that's what your dream is or that what your thought process is.
Indeed. Speaking of reason and responsibility, one of the things that people say is that if I can attract men and I look like a woman, that I am, by all intents and purposes, a woman. So I know I joke all the time about I'm a rich white woman that's born in the wrong body, brother. But as long as I try to prove that, I could use my own standard of proving it and still be wrong. And that's where I think reason is the thing that is missing from the conversation. And they make the argument that not all women can give birth. But I say that the anatomy of a woman has ovaries, and they bring up the argument that some people have ovaries and I think testicles, something like that. In case of like hermaphrodites or people that are called intersex, they say that hermaphrodites is like a slur. But they have both sexes, and there the argument becomes cloudy, and they can get away with saying the things that they do. And I believe in rights for everybody, but I think that's where we veer off the conversation. And speaking of conversations on women's rights, there was another country that just passed legislation to make abortion rights a law rather than have it be an amendment to their constitution so that it can be argued in courts. You can take the rights of abortion out of the courts if you had the right politicians in the legislature to turn the right of a woman to choose what to do with her body into a law. That still is not achievable in the United States. And I think part of the problem is there's a lack of serious reasoning or lack of logic on how to move forward with that right for women. Your thoughts on that, my brother?
Bro, I don't really have any thoughts about that. No, I don't know. I don't know where you're going with that. And I want to be careful about, trying to be supportive of women's rights and having an intelligent conversation about women's rights without being a woman, but not having a woman present. So I don't, and now it sounds like you're throwing some legal issues into that. I don't know. I don't want to veer too far off, with this conversation, trying to sound intelligent about women's rights and abortion, legal rights, and other countries and taking stuff out of court, in court. I don't know the ins and outs of that. I really don't.
Yes, sir. Tonight we tried to have a historical context for the role of women in society, particularly in the United States, as we are United States citizens. And as brother just alluded to, we are not in any position to take the side of or against anyone, including women, since we are neither of those things. That's a great point, brother. It was just a part of the talking points for tonight's discussion. And you're listening to Black Mental Health and Race, and hopefully you're at home having your own high vibration conversations about such issues where you're not arguing back and forth, but you're adding to the conversation. And let's have those types of conversations. in conclusion, brother, as we end tonight's podcast, I think I summarized some of the key points. Take us home, brother. That's my final move. I couldn't think of anything else to say, but take us home.
I don't know, bro. I think we've been taken home. Did you get all of your
Yeah, we're at the end of the conclusion. Point number 4 was abortion, legal rights. And then the summary was all the key points that we brought up tonight, from this 19-year-old girl all the way up to abortion rights, and who is entitled to what, and how to carry yourself as a security-minded person in all walks of life, whether you be a male or a female or somewhere in between. How should you carry yourself to get the most out of your experience, out of your existence? I think they call that existentialism. Books that people may want to further their knowledge on the subject. Simone de Beauvoir, she's a key author in existentialist philosophy. There's the Second Sex book that she wrote. There's also Judith Butler and Bell Hooks. I remember Bell Hooks. She didn't die. She just passed on to the ancestors in the last couple of years, 5 to 10 years. But she was a strong advocate for feminism and women's empowerment and gender equality and gender education, sexuality of women, and feminist philosophy. So these are books that will allow you to have intelligent conversations about issues, even if you're not a woman. But like Dr. Moore cautioned us, that you couldn't get smart enough to ever have any consequence in the way women should think or carry out their lives. And that goes for anybody, not just how women should think, but people in general. But we do talk in general terms about trauma, and we do talk in general terms about those excessive thoughts that we have in our minds and how to get that dysregulation back in order. I think I did a halfway decent job on concluding, brother.
Well, I just want to be careful that as men, that, having a conversation about women, that we're just very careful and very mindful that we aren't women, and that it is very problematic for me when men start to tell women what they can and cannot do with their bodies, right? So this whole abortion issue and things like that, the arrogance of men to come in and tell women that regardless of whatever their situation is, that they should or shouldn't do this with their bodies. I think that's arrogance and ignorance. And I think that has been, it has been a cornerstone of white male ego in this country that don't want to let that go. And I find it very problematic. I think you talked earlier about the War of 1812 and the role that women played in the role of 1812 but not just the role that women played in the War of 1812, World War One, World War Two, the Civil Rights era, and just going on and on. Women have always played a profound role, throughout history, throughout all the wars, throughout all of the cultures, and it's just been so diminished for so long. Women didn't even have the right to vote, I think, until the 19th Amendment. So you're talking about from the War of 1812 until the 19th Amendment of women, getting the right to vote, and now, to now be trying to take rights back from women after all these years, I think is just very traumatic. And so that's why I just want to be very careful about, saying particular things about women and trying to be supportive, but not knowing that you might be saying something that's not supportive. So I just want to be very careful, about that.
And would that apply also to transgender women? Do we have a right to say anything about what their plight is in life?
Well, again, I'm not going to talk about transgender women because I don't know enough to talk about transgender women. That's a new thing for me. And I don't know how women feel about transgender women. So I'm not going to try to get in that conversation. That's not a lane that I want to get into. I think that that's a conversation for them, for transgender women and women. I don't know that women see transgender women as women. I don't know that. So I can't get in that conversation. That's not something that, I feel qualified to speak on. Women, transgender women, I know what I know about women. I don't know anything about transgender women, and I'm not in a place where that's something that I'm really interested in. So I'll just stay out of that lane. But in closing, I will say that during this month of Ramadan, my daughter and I participate. This is the first year she really kind of tried to participate in Ramadan. She ordered her hijab at the beginning of Ramadan, and she went to the mosque with me, and we made salah at the mosque together for the first time during Ramadan since she was a kid.
Wow. Congratulations.
But yeah, bro, that's my contribution to women's history.
Yes, sir. I think we did a decent job, brother. Even though we have testicles. This has been another episode of High Vibration Conversations. We try not to take ourselves too serious in terms of what you should think out in the audience. That's on you. What we hope that we've done is giving you an incentive to start the conversation, not as an argument, but as a way to reason and get along with the people that you encounter in life. Last words, my brother.
Bro, that is the last words, bro.
Yes,
and
sir.
I greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace to the universe.
Peace to the guys.
You still don't get it, do you? I'd love if you shared your thoughts on the matter. What do you think?
I'm sorry, the person you are trying to reach has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet. Please try your call again later. Goodbye.